time for another episode of the PEBAheads, and we've got some new faces with us this week. We got Lenny from Bakersfield joining us, and Scott from Reno, and of course, newer member of the board and everybody's favorite New Jersey GM, Michael. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Great.
I'm
Going
as
good.
angry as ever. So just disgruntled and mad at the world, but we can keep my personal issues out of this. So I know we have an agenda, so this isn't therapy, it's a podcast. So
Hey,
But
this podcast could be your therapy.
yeah, baseball
It
is
It
therapy.
is. Oh yeah, it definitely keeps my heart rate down. It's really great.
Yeah. I mean, I got a Cubs
Like I
game
said,
today.
between the Cubs and the Bakersfield Bears, whew, about resting heart rate of 110. So super excited to be back on the podcast though.
Well, I know I've got my Scotch poured. I know you've got a drink there, Lenny. So Scott's got. What do you got, Scott? Is it whiskey?
Yeah, I'm a bourbon guy. I only
Nice.
drink bourbon, nothing else.
All right. And Michael's just sitting there smiling.
I got off of work late. I didn't realize that we were gonna be drinking. So yeah,
Oh,
He's,
you didn't
he's-
realize we were going to be drinking?
I got beer in the fridge. Maybe if I get a second, I'll get up and walk away for a moment.
All
high,
right.
high on PEBA. You're high on PEBA.
Definitely.
Well, we've got a list of good topics this week, and just kind of highlight some of those before we kick off. We're gonna be covering some of the best off-season moves. We're gonna talk some contender pretender discussion like we did last year. We're gonna talk about a non-playoff team from last season that we think has a good shot at making it this year. We're gonna kind of do similar to the Burrow watch that we did last year, but with we're gonna call it Barrios watch for the new Burrow international reliever that's signed with San Antonio, and then we'll tie in a Burrow update just to kind of give everybody an idea what's going on there. And we'll close out the show with some OOTP strategy on the international free agency that was just announced early on. And I think we just had our first practice or the showcase on that one. So without further ado, let's dive on in here. We'll go with best offseason moves, and we'll go with one of the new guys, Lenny. You're looking at off-season moves. What was one that stood out to you?
The one that is, I don't know if it's surprising, because he's always been good, and I just, I passed on him because I was like, no way that a 34-year-old catcher is going to keep hitting like crazy for, I knew he wouldn't hit for me because anybody I signed just doesn't hit. Every move I made that I was positive about on the last podcast, I'm no longer positive about. But I take, Claudio Perez and Palm Springs. They've been making all these moves, and I was sitting there thinking about all the moves I made, and I watched, Palm Springs have them all succeed, and an aging catcher, that's probably paying DH for him, but still, I just was going through like the league leaders and statistics going, really? I didn't even throw in on him. So, but I made all the right moves, the smart moves, but it's the other ones that seem to work. So the more I think about it, the worse it gets. So that's where I'm at.
No, that was an interesting one because I know, Michael, I know you've got some opinions on that one. And
Yeah,
I'm curious to see what Scott thinks too.
I got people yelling at me because I was poo-pooing all over it because I saw him just as a DH, which is what he's playing right now.
Yeah,
because he's not a good catcher, at least statistically, since OOTP kind of fixed or broke it again, if you want to consider it that way, catching in general. But yeah, I mean, he's batting out of this world. But yeah, I got kind of crapped all over because I just don't think he's a catcher. I mean, do you want to pay that much for a DH? I don't normally want to pay that much for a DH, but that's me.
I'd pay anybody who would hit. I just don't have anybody. Anybody at all. Scott, what do you think?
About the actual signing of the catcher, I think it's fine. I tried really hard to improve my team through free agency this past year and did not do much at all. And it was not for a lack of trying. There are many seasons where I just don't try that hard because I'm committed to the prospects that I'm developing, and I try and do a timing of those prospects coming up. So it's more of a sporadic free agent, like peppering in to my roster. As a lot of you guys who've looked over my roster see that it's very much built through, the minor league system. But, regardless of a tremendous amount of effort, I just could not get any of the people that I wanted to sign. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure that there were too many, great opportunities out there. It seemed like kind of I hate to say it, but a little bit of a weak free agent class this year.
Mhm.
As far as one of the signings that I'm paying the most attention to, again, I looked to see, who would be the best, and I couldn't find one that kind of blew my doors off. But I will say, I'm not a big fan. I hate to, ruin half the subject matters tonight, but 1 month into the season, there are things you can see, but it's more trends that I'm looking at than it is the standings.
Yeah.
Young guys who are performing well are big things to look for.
Mhm.
Slumping, rookies, not that big a deal. Slumping veterans, it's not that big a deal. I mean, it's 1 month. A lot can change. That's the greatest thing about the game to me, is how 1 month is nothing. It could look like the world is falling apart for your team by the end of April, and next thing you know, you're a juggernaut by the time the end of August hits. So I will say that one of the teams stole my first baseman from me, Jonathan Hill. In a desperate effort, as soon as I saw that the rule was suspended, I gave him the qualifying offer and expected to be able to sign him for a discount because I just love the guy. He's 32 years old now, very good defense and a really solid hitter. He's got an 803 career OPS in 3,800 plate appearances, so not necessarily small. His 162 game average is nothing great, but it's not bad. It's 800. So he's averaging a 289 batting average, a 331 on base percentage, and a 469 slugging, 23 homers, 30 doubles, and 80 RBI. And along with that, he's got consistently solid defense. So I would say, in Manchester right now is in second place, a game and a half out of first with a 14-11 record. I think that was a solid signing.
It's interesting, Scott, that you said that, you could get anybody. And then I made like a no way in hell offer on my high price, second baseman that isn't doing jack right now, that hit 49 home runs last year. And I woke up the next day and they were like, oh, signs, and giving up picks and all this stuff. And I was like, I didn't even really think I was going to get him. And now he's on my team. And I think now he's looking around going, why the hell am I here? So it's like, again, like, I was like, all right, picking up like a top 5 player.
So to break the fourth wall on this, do you think the adaptability ratings, because I didn't look at his adaptability rating, but do you think that plays into a change of team with these guys? And sometimes, again, being the third, I think what is it, April 30th? We're early. He could really go on a tear.
Oh, and so I love that we're going to be on this podcast a lot now because your positivity I need. And so it's really interesting being a Cubs fan and now a Bakersfield GM. And I will talk about this, and to the point where people just stop watching, is do I think that the algorithm is built like a change of scenery? Yes, but only when it works against me. So I was like, our boy Riley here needs, a change of scenery. He needs some California love. And, No, no. Who knew that you would want to live in Jersey over freaking California? All
Yeah.
right. So,
But did you look? Because I didn't look. So
no, I can look right now.
does he have a
Yeah.
low?
My
He does
low.
have a low adaptability. Yeah.
Of
Yeah,
course.
so
Of course he does.
it's entirely possible that rating, and again, I don't know. I have no personal contact with Marcus, but it's entirely possible that it's written in that he's going to struggle in April, right? Until he kind of feels more comfortable with the team. And it's kind of a neat, if it works that way, it's kind of a neat aspect to the game. You have to.
And that's a really good perspective. And then I would just ask, in the next version after the one we have coming up, that you can send like gifts and massages and things like that. Like, where's the budget for,
I live in Cleveland, so massages and athletes, pretty touchy subject.
Let me get the beep button ready on the. We'll fix that in post. Okay, here we go. But yeah, that just to hear, I think I messaged Michael after I went through it, and I was like, what the heck? He wasn't supposed to say yes to that.
Well, I know, Michael, you were kind of hoping that people would stay away, or not hoping maybe, but like it was a possibility of bringing Riley back depending on what the ask was.
It was because I had this conversation with Lenny after he signed him. This was an interesting one for me because I had a deal kind of set up with Okinawa to pull in Ortiz if, God forbid, somebody actually went and got Riley, because I wanted to. The deal was essentially package that supplemental pick with it, and if we didn't get it, I wasn't willing to throw in the extra draft pick or the prospect, which was my pitcher Ken Stewart, to make the deal work. And as soon as Lenny did it and got him, I was like, oh God, here we go. This is going to completely crush my budget and my finances. And I'm going to have to really like wheel and deal now and hope this all works out, because we kind of already committed to it. So it was, and I have no regrets. It was just funny that that's kind of how it worked out. I was potentially going to try to get Riley back at a cheaper deal as we got closer, assuming, in the final year of the rule that nobody would have touched him because he was asking for a ridiculous amount of money. And I'd be able to kind of snag him back on a short-term deal, to kind of just help hold things over. So it started a whole chain reaction for me. So thank you, Lenny, because it's making me nervous all year, especially with my slow start this year.
And I'm glad that you have some stress too. And I think semantics are important, that the words you chose were God forbid, and it was a decision I chose. And like, we're at that level that we're talking to a higher power when Lenny makes decisions on things. So, but yeah, that's what I got.
I can't complain though. I mean, right now Ortiz is doing pretty well, so I don't have an issue there.
Yeah, it's awful. It must be awful having that problem.
Well, the one move
performs. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean.
Michael, did you have a move that you thought was kind of the one that stood out for you?
I was going to go with just trades in general. I mean, we had the Ortiz trade, obviously that was kind of a big one. But other than that, no, I kind of got sidelined due to that conversation. I did like the Perez one because it was kind of making me, eat my words. I actually, and I stated this on the forum or on the Slack, I actually liked Megavolt or Ornell's pickup as well from Palm Springs, just because I think he is a more complete player and he can provide more of a consistent impact potentially. And he wasn't overly expensive for just 1 year, 10 million. That's not too bad. But it's a lot of like the little, for me, the big thing was a lot of the little pickups. Crystal Lake picking back up Trujillo, which I still have my little love affair from his time in New Jersey. I was hoping to pick him up for cheaper, but RJ paid him more than I was willing to. So I think there was a lot of good other little trades that were done that are going to help round out teams and kind of really help them, compared to just a few big ones, because it's always the big ones that are the scary ones. And I know we have the Barrios watch later too. But like that's another, you want to go huge signing, that's another ridiculous one that we're talking about, that's on there with Burrows, essentially, you know, that reverse salary massive deal. And that's one that I think I was happier with the Burrows one. I'm less sold this Barrios one, but we can get to that one in a bit. So I'll let you jump into what player you think is the best pick, Sean.
I'm going with the big trade over the offseason. That was Michael Roberts going over to Madison. And it's one of those where it's like, I didn't think that Florida would ever be able to truly get the max value for any of the big three guys that they have. But it's interesting when you dive in on it because they gave up some good players and guys that can make an impact on Florida pretty soon. It looks like a lot of the ones that were traded, it looks like Okada and Glotz are both at Florida's AAA level. You have a second baseman, Kobayashi, that was at their A level, but could possibly move up pretty quick. Looks like he's pretty well developed for a 19-year-old, and then a first-round draft pick with it as well. So, I mean, anytime you have a system like Madison that is one of the top farm systems, you have that ability to give some guys up to acquire a guy that fits into your team and fills a need that you're lacking. I mean, I think it's one of those few situations where both teams got what they needed at that point. Florida wanted more depth, wanted more bullets, and they've got those. They were able to ship that off. They're still a top team, and now Madison is a contender for a playoff spot on that other side. So it's interesting. It's one of those where it's like, I don't know. I mean, Roberts is, when you take him off of Florida, he's one of the best players in the game. And he was still one of the best players in the game, but he was overshadowed by two guys that produce a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where he shakes off, war wise and just evaluation wise on the other side. But it's hard to, say like, oh, one team won, one team lost. Like both teams got what they were looking for, and ultimately that's it's what you want in a trade. You want both teams to feel like they're getting value out of it, not that there's like immediately after a regret. So
Yeah, well, there shouldn't be a winning. You want to get what's best for you. You shouldn't try
Yeah.
to go out try to win a trade. Because when you try to win a trade, that means you're trying to pull one over on someone. So if you can find a trade that helps everybody out. Fun fact, Scott. Roberts not doing so hot right now. Guess what? He's got low adaptability.
I rest my case.
Full circle. Full circle.
Back onto Madison. So I think what I like about that trade the most is I think the timing is right for them, right? So this is a team that really has built up a pretty solid farm system. Not only that, it's a farm system with a lot of high level talent that's ready to break through. And that's when you need to start peppering in people through trades and free agency to round out that team. And I think that acquisition, that trade, I think accomplished that for them. I think they've got a couple other moves left in them that they can make to really make a push and turn that team into a very powerful contender, right? Now you got to be, take it from me. I know how hard it is. It's easy to say it and it's hard for me to actually act on it. But once you acquire that talent in your farm system, the hardest thing to do, but the best thing to do is to trade some of that talent that's low in your system away to supplement your big league team when the time is right, when it's right to strike. And I think Madison is ready for that. We've talked about them for at least 2 seasons now. They are they are right there in that pole position, ready to take off. And I think, barring any injuries or unforeseen circumstances, I think they're going to show us something this year or next year.
I would like to see them just make the playoffs first before we start calling them contenders. But yeah,
Well,
I definitely want to see them make the playoffs for the first time ever, because they're obviously that one team that has yet to ever make the playoffs. So it seems like there's something that goes wrong every season.
And I agree with you. And really, that's what I meant, was that I'd like to see them contend for a playoff spot and be some, because that's what we all want, right? I don't need to win. I don't expect to win it, but in all honesty, I expect to make the playoffs, most of the time. And then I let the chips fall, right? I got hot last year, right? We all know that. Let's not kid ourselves. I steamrolled through, our league from just pure luck. I got hot at the right moment. We talked about previous podcasts. Oh, you think you got it, what it takes to go? I'm like, no, probably not. But I rode the wave. That's all you can expect. Get in and hope to ride a wave.
Yeah.
And not run into the juggernaut that is known as Florida.
Yeah. And I like to ride a wave when another GM explains my strategy, exactly how I'm doing it in my brain, but it seems to work for them and not for me. Which is a great segue to the next question.
Yeah.
Because the more we talk about this one, the more depressed I get. And I don't.
No, that's a good segue. Get into the contender versus the pretender discussion, and it kind of will bleed probably into the next question after that, but we'll start back up with you, Lenny.
I want to talk about Yuma. We could do the whole episode on Yuma.
Well, let's just start there. Yuma 13-11 right now, second place. A sim ago they were in first.
Yeah.
He has leapfrogged them. Are they truly contenders with their pitching staff of Sun and Pin and some of the other pieces, or are they still kind of pretenders in your eyes?
No, they're the only pretender on this thing. Maybe they're the only pretender on this on in the league right now.
But what a great pretender.
Yeah, look,
what a great one.
I love them. I love Bob. I love Yuma. Reno and Yuma have always had a really special relationship. We've been at the bottom together a lot, but he's not ready. Now, again, I was looking at this. So Yuma, last season's win percentage, current this season win percentage, again, through, 28 games. Yuma's got 24 games. I mean, we're predicting a lot off of 24 games, but they have a win percentage of 542 right now. And they finished last year at 389. That's a net positive of 153 points. That's not what's going to happen at the end of the year, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Anybody know who the highest is? Because I thought that would be the highest. They're in third place.
Wow.
Second place is New Orleans. New Orleans had a 358 win percentage last year. New Orleans was 58-104. They've got a 520 for a gain of 162 points.
Jeez.
Exactly. Number one. Look, again, this stuff will get sorted out in July and August, right? The number one goes to Neo Tokyo.
Yeah,
they currently have a 520 win percentage, and last year they finished with a 333, 54-108. That is a 187, not to be confused with murder, but that's a 187 net gain. That will none of those three will hold up in the net gain at the end of September. You can mark that down. Having said that, did these teams improve themselves? Probably, right? Did they improve themselves enough to win a division or make a wild card? Maybe. There's a lot of injuries that need to play out. There's a lot more games that need to be played before we determine that. But I would say, but if you force me to pick, like a pretender, and I hate doing it because it's like you're picking on someone, but Yuma's my pretender. If you force me to pick a contender, it's Madison. I think because of the timing thing. I mean, they're ready, right? They built up a lot of players, and if they get some luck and not have to suffer injuries to key players. And they maybe look for opportunities to make some moves at the trade deadline. That team could contend for a playoff spot, not necessarily going to take it all, right? I never expect to take it all. I haven't done it yet, tried it many, many times, but I think they could be a contender in that Reno was last year. They could contend for a playoff spot and let the chips fall and hope for a hot streak.
Yeah.
See,
No,
but
I
this
like
is
it.
this is the time of year. This is the early season overreactions. This is
Yeah.
what we want to see.
Yeah, I'm trying to dampen that. So I apologize.
No,
No,
don't
I-
apologize. I mean, for me, it's a mental health condition. So like, it's really great.
I think there's a legitimate shot that instead of the traditional trend in the SL of 3 teams coming out of the Rising Sun, that 3 teams come out of Desert Hills this year.
Tempe, I think I didn't say my contender. Tempe's watching him build that something to nothing.
You know, I agree. I agree.
The slow
I've
burn
got-
was really good. He did a really good job on that.
Yeah, the fact that he's in our division makes me keep closer eyes on him. And look, that's a good team, and he could easily whoop us both. He could whoop us both for the division lead. I did look into, so I was surprised. I had forgotten, maybe it's because of the craziness of getting into the playoffs, but I had forgotten that there was a tiebreaker between Toyoma and Nihamashi last year. So they played 163 games, right? So they've got an extra game from everybody else. And I'm like, they had to play a tiebreaker just to decide who was going to win the division.
Yeah.
But you had, 2 teams, Toyoma won the division, the Rising Sun division in the IL with 101 games. And Nihamashi came in second with 100 wins. So, that's a pretty impressive, little battle they had there. Will we get a repeat of it this year? Who knows, but I'm with you guys. I think we might get a surprise out of the rest of the IL to see who becomes the wild card.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees that it's one of those 2 teams.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Michael, did you have any contender pretender different than what we talked about?
The only one I'll add to that list, and this is with a huge asterisk, is Charleston. Assuming that they're done playing their up and down games and they actually play everybody. I know I talked about them last year with that pitching staff. I think that they are contenders for the playoffs. They could potentially be that team to add from the Dixie, so you could potentially have 3 from the Dixie, depending on how Kentucky ends up. I know that they kind of faltered a little last year, but ended up fixing themselves towards the end. But Charleston, I think, is a contender, and at minimum, they're going to make everybody else work. So hopefully we won't have those huge win gaps kind of going forward, because we got another team that's hopefully going to be competitive. But that would be the one additional team that I would throw out there. And I do believe that as long as they're committed, they are definitely a contender.
So if I can add something to that. In my experience, you've got these phases. And again, I'm kind of an expert on cycling of team wins and losses, right? I forget my record loss might be 122 losses. It's at least 118. It's high, but there's this phase that you go through where losing 100 games, right, and then winning that 60, 70, then getting to that 80, upper 80s area. It's hard to go. So they won 68 games last year. That's a big leap. It's not impossible, but that's a heavy lift to go from 68 to what's it now. I get it. I was looking the IL Great Lakes, Duluth won with 86 wins. Bit of a low number there, right? But I don't necessarily expect 86 could win too many divisions this year. It obviously it can win a division, but the point is that you got to kind of get to that 80, 84 86 win mark and then take the next step, right? But it's almost like you're skipping a grade to try and go from 60 wins to the 90 or 90 something that it takes to win a division typically. So sometimes you can, that's a big leap. I think it's easier. It's not that hard to go from 50 wins to 65 or 68 wins. It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah,
But
well, a lot of those are the coin flip games. You know, they go one
Yeah.
way or another.
And, let's face it, losing 100 plus games, you're not trying to win too hard,
I got
So-
mad when we started winning last year. I was like, oh, stop that
So-
immediately.
So I guess if you're trying, you're probably gonna, even if you're not trying hard, you're probably gonna win 60 games, right? The hard part is getting over that 80 to 90 hump. That's the real difficult stretch, is to get into that, break into that 90 win frame is where you've got to really there's got to be some luck involved, and got to be a considerable amount of effort and timing to get that done.
Then you got to have your ebbs and flows of your other teams either giving up, reseeding themselves, or whatever.
Right.
And so last year, I think on the low end we had Kentucky with 91, Amsterdam with 92. So assuming you got to get at least 90 to be in the conversation, I agree. That's a huge jump, Scott, for them to do. I just think that they've been hiding a lot of their players in AAA.
Okay.
And so now that they're finally all up, like I said, assuming they actually all stay up, their pitching staff to me is on par scary as what Hartford's was when Hartford was making their kind of Cinderella run. Obviously they've regressed heavily because they don't have the bats to support it, but Hartford kind of came out of nowhere, and I can see Charleston kind of breaking through that year, this year as well. Especially, I mean, yeah, New Orleans is doing well. Kentucky, I still expect to be there, but let's face it, San Antonio is probably still in kind of the retool rebuild. Gloucester, I don't know.
That's right.
Right.
That's
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
San Juan, I know, is struggling a bit. Arlington's clearly kind of retool rebuild. Hartford's and I always feel like I'm so mean to Hartford as a team, but they just don't have bats, so I don't expect them to do well despite the pitching staff. So there's just a lot of teams that they can jump past and continue kind of take advantage of. So I could see it, but at the same time, to your point, that's an incredible jump to make to get in there, especially when everyone else is still trying to contend there at the top. So
Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads into, so Hartford was a team I wanted to kind of highlight, and it's not like you said, Michael, rag on, like, beat on that part of it, but it's a team that I thought, based on previous seasons, that with the pitching, and then they were getting some timely hitting, that, maybe they continue that rise that they had, but so far early on, they're 9-17, and it's a bad place to be in, because you've got that elite pitching, but you don't have the hitting. And like, okay, so are you able to supplement that quick enough by, maybe you draft an elite hitter in the next upcoming draft, and you hope that, not this next draft, but the one after that, but you hope that you can get them quick, or, or are you in that loop that nobody wants to be in, where you're like, you have elite pitching, but you don't have hitting, and then you draft hitters and your pitchers are old and you can't re-sign them, or they're
No
just
idea
old.
what that feels like.
Yeah.
I've never seen that trend. It's just, sorry for whoever that happens to.
So it's tough. And then on the other side of it, you have a team like Havana, where I didn't expect them to be 15-8 at this point of the season. And I know that they were kind of going through a transition. They signed their shortstop to an extension, and he's a great player. It's Mateo. He's batting 350 right now. But based on the trend and how that team had been performing the past few years, that they were kind of on the downside. But now you start off 15-8, and it's like, we're right in the thick of things here. You might be you're only a game and a half out of the division, and even then, you're still a wild card team at this point. Like,
Well, and their starting pitching is out of this world right now. Everybody's under 4.
yeah, they've got a couple young starters.
Yeah.
It looks like,
Top of the rotation is almost unhittable.
yeah, Maruyama, he's 24. Sosa, he's 24.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at them now. Look, I like their roster. They've got a nice balance of youth and experience. And again, look, they were 79 and 83. They had a 488 win percentage last year. That's in that level where bringing up the right prospects. They've got a third baseman in AAA. This Pepe Padino dude looks like a monster. That's a team that I would like to have. That team, it would be fun this year if I was that team, because I think with the right trades and the right promotions, that team could make a serious run for things, because they're just in that groove area, going from 79 wins to 90 something. That's doable. Yep. With the right changes. I just think that getting a 30-win swing from year to year, a 40-win swing from year to year, is just that. There's a lot of things. Luck is the number one factor there. You can do it with hard work, getting a 20-win swing.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's like, I would be hard pressed to not call Padino up. Like,
yeah, he's ready, and they're ready for him. Yep. Right? I didn't see who did they have playing third. So
yeah, let's see who do they have.
Who would he be replacing?
Irolanovich. I mean, I don't think he's really anybody.
The Iron Curtain.
I mean, I would be scared to
great nickname.
To see what would happen.
Great nickname. And he's actually been pretty consistent. So yeah, that would be but you can technically move him to first.
You move him to, you could probably move some of these guys around.
I think there's some room. There's room for the player. There's room for their young third baseman, but he doesn't have to play third, right? Yeah. That's exactly what I would do. I would shift some of these guys around, and someone would be, musical chairs. Someone would be left without a seat, but it's not going to be a good player.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody like this Ozaki guy, like move Gallegos maybe to a left field and DH him or something, somewhere to get that bat in.
Oh yeah, the move is there, right? And the pitching looks good, Yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're overachieving too much. So,
well, I'll be honest. Like I reached out, I think it was last season or the year before about Mateo, and I was shut down. Like, nope, we're re-signing this guy. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, your team's on the downtrend. Like, what? And this is what's so great about this game and this just the league in general. It doesn't matter what you think in your head. Like, other people are looking at it a different way. You take a step back. You don't have to do a full-blown rebuild. Havana's taken a couple seasons where they've recouped. They've put together something, and now they're competitive again. And they didn't have to get rid of Mateo. Like, he's still their top guy, but now they've put some young guys around him, and they have more young guys coming, and they're a threat. Like,
no, I like them. I put them in the same category that I put Madison. I think they're there, right? They're ready to make a move. Again, with some luck, and hopefully you don't lose any key players to 6-month injuries, assuming those two caveats, I think that they'll definitely make some waves over the next year or two.
And then the last one, we kind of touched on it. No, we'll go in the next question, because I think we can cover this team in the next.
Well, before the next question, right?
Let's see. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We're going to do something new.
Yeah.
We're going to monetize PEBA, and we'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
All right.
We'll see you in a little bit.
What do you miss most about the outside?
Great outdoors. How about you?
The nightlife. No, dance hall girls.
Dance hall girls. How about you, Pedro?
Pickles, Mexican food.
All right, welcome back to the PEBA podcast, and thank you to our sponsor. Everybody's reloaded, and we're going to take our last two questions and bring it home. So go for it, Sean. You're the boss.
Well, no, we'll get into this one, and it's kind of the Burrow update, but with the new Burrow, our international reliever that came in this year, Barrios, who signed a long and very expensive deal with the San Antonio Calzones of Laredo.
A little over 101 million over 6 years. De-escalating, which seems to be the trend with these guys.
Now he looks like a guy that, you know, could be an elite reliever, but that is a lot of money for that type of player.
Yeah, his first season is 27 million to play apparently in AAA, but his last season, when he's 28 years old, is 9 million. That could be a pretty good contract as this thing goes on. So not to Bigfoot this thing, but depending on your, and I didn't look at their finances, but you know, depending on your finances, if you've got a lot of money that's just getting shaved off by the owner in the early years and you time this thing right, this could be a good player, right? You know,
Yeah.
Someone, if you're paying him $9, $10, $11 million to, you know, to pitch well for you, that's not a bad deal if you time it. Now the 27 million in the first year, and I forget what the second year is not that much lower. It does, so 27, 22, 17, 14, you know, you're going to shell out some big bucks. Apparently, according to San Antonio's apparent plan, again, I don't know, I haven't spoken to the GM, but you know, he's spent, you know, 4 innings in PEBA this year, and the rest of it has been in AAA. You know, that's a lot of money to pay a AAA player. My owner better be skimming off 30 million a year for this to make sense to me.
Yeah, for it to make sense for me is, I mean, like you said, if he develops into a lockdown closer and you're paying him 9 million, then it looks genius. But, you know, and since they're not contenders now, and if you have the money, it's almost like a reverse draft, you know, like you're going to pay just to get him and watch him develop into that. And then you'll be able to make bigger moves later on.
Or international. Think of what some of these people, some of our, you know, I know that we're going to discuss it later on, but I haven't figured out the international stuff. I am drowning in that. I've got 0 successes with the new system. So
every time I've touched one, they just have evaporated.
So you know, that's
why are you laughing, Mike? Come on, man.
I pulled a 5-star prospect for like 400,000.
You know what? I'm gonna mute you really quick.
Mike, again, I don't off the new system.
Yeah, it's you.
Okay,
just
all right.
you need to
Let's press pause because we're going to talk about it. This will be fun. I want to learn from you, Mike, because I am completely clueless with the new system. But having said that, look, I'm not saying that this is a terrible deal, Sean, but it's a decent deal depending, right? I.e. depending on, does he develop into it looks like he's a pretty good reliever right now. And is there a plan to develop another pitch? You know, I don't think, do you have the points? And I'm not a winter league expert, but is it possible to both develop another pitch and increase stamina? You know, is that too much?
He's got high work ethic, but I mean,
let me jump in here because this has been grinding my gears on ever since this guy kind of materialized into the league, because I just don't get it. It's 4 stamina. He's not really built to be a starter. So your winter league, which you can only use after year 1, would be essentially to up those stats, which you don't need to. He's pretty close now, is for the most part. So you can try to increase his stamina there to make him more of a worthwhile pitcher as a starter, I should say. Because for me, I'm sorry, a 4 stamina guy is not a starter. You'll get maybe 5 innings. To me, that's just not ideal. And so if you go that route and you waste your winter ball to increase his stamina, you can't give him a 3rd pitch. So then you're stuck with a 2-pitch starter, which doesn't make sense. So if you do reverse, you need 2 seasons, I believe. At least 2, I forget what, if it's major league or whatever, seasons for them to be qualifying for adding another pitch. Because keep in mind, the special training to add a pitch has slightly increased requirements over just regular winter ball. So if you go that route and you leave the stamina alone, you want to add another pitch, you're probably waiting longer. You don't know what the quality of the pitch is going to be. And then he's just a low stamina starting pitcher. So from my perspective, you paid $100+ million for a reliever, which I know we've had this discussion in previous years, Sean, that how do you pay a guy who comes in and maybe only pitches 60 to 80 innings a year that absurd amount of money? Even $9 million to me at the end of the contract, while a good deal, is absurdly expensive.
If he's locked down, like like elite.
If he's locked down, okay, then maybe you're getting value. But I mean, you're banking everything on the final year. To me, this is just. I don't know how you make it work unless you just take the chance and hope that his 4 stamina doesn't matter and you'll somehow add a 3rd pitch and he's this magical starter. Or maybe Sean, he's going to subscribe to your method of not doing the starter, you do an opener, and then you have him follow up for 4 or 5 innings after that and hope for the best. So I don't know. To me, this is over engineering some of the basics of OOTP. That's my I'm highly negative on this guy, so I apologize. But that's my point of view on the guy.
So my question then, is it the signing or the game? Like, should this player even exist? That's like philosophical. Like, what is the value when you're getting that much of this in-betweener? I mean, is it on us, the GMs, to go, just let that sit because there's talent there, but what are you going to do with them? Are you willing to pay him that, like? Oh,
he's worth having on your roster. Don't get me wrong. He's a good player, good prospect. I just wouldn't pay him that absurd amount of money. And that's up to every single GM then to, and we're not colluding here, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't pay him that much. I'd wait till his price came down a bit and something a little bit more reasonable. But that's me. Everyone has, the money they have to spend. Like Scott brought up, he had all this money, and if it made sense to sign him and he'll be worthwhile later, then that's fine. But why not spend all of that money in international free agency? Why not spend all that money in signing other pieces that'll help you, that you could possibly flip, or you can do something else with? For me, it's just, I'm like 100%, like, this is the exact, like, Burrows, I understood. Burrows made sense to me because there's like that plan there. There's things you can do with him long term for it to make sense. Berrios to me is just like, why are people getting excited about him? He's just a reliever. That's my opinion. I would love someone to tell me and explain to me why I'm wrong.
Okay, I'm here, Mike.
I love it.
All right, so it is entirely possible that the newer versions of the game have changed things enough that this no longer stands. So, I don't know. I don't know the inner workings, but I had a pitcher who's currently still with me. I turned him into a coach. His name is Jong Shun Kong. Okay. He was drafted by me in the 1st round, I believe. And he was a 4 stamina the whole time, right? Like from the draft. And I got his
Earthquake. Yes.
Yeah. Earthquake. So I had this is his coaching, but I gotta get back to
pull it up here. Yeah, here we go.
If you look at so he pitched, there you go, 201 innings with a 4 stamina. I can't remember how many pitches he had when he was in his prime. So I brought him, as you see, I brought him up at the age of 22. He went 15-7 with a 315. And that accounted for, that was a pretty good, I can't see what the
176 innings the first year.
Yeah, he was a 4 stamina like his whole career. I actually boosted him. I think Winter League might have, again, this is a long time ago. So you see in the league 2017 to 2029. So it was a while ago, and it takes about 1 year to go 2 years in PEBA. So that tells you how long ago this was. I think my kids were little. So, and they both tower over me now. He was a good pitcher. Like, I liked him a lot. Now, he maxed out at 200 innings, as you can see, but so a 4 stamina is not going to give you 250 innings pitched. Not going to happen. Not going to average 200, but 170. Now, I eventually, as he got older, I flipped him to a closer, just because the stamina really, really affected his abilities to be a starter as he aged. So at the age of 30, I flipped him to a reliever, right? So he got 30 starts as a 29-year-old, but as a 30-year-old, I was like, I think it's time, right? Because he had those 2 5+ ERAs, and I thought it was because of the stamina. But he had a period there where he was, while not superstar, again, if he had a 6 or 7 stamina, that whole career line goes up, right? I think the ERA goes up. I think everything improves with a better stamina as a starter.
3-time All-Star. So
yeah, just when I flipped him to a reliever, I did it because of those 2 high ERA years, and said, I think the stamina is really it between aging player and low stamina. I'm like, it's time. And I think he had at least 3 pitches. He didn't have 2. I can't remember if he had 4. I just don't, off the top of my head. I just briefly looked at him, and his pitches were, I think it was 2 pitches towards the end of his career, but I think he might have lost something. He definitely had at least 3 pitches when I drafted him and when he first came up. So my point is, it can work. It's just not a long term. You're not going to get a 33-year-old or a 35-year-old starter with a 4 stamina and 3 pitches that's going to last that long. You've got to think about relieving at some point. And this guy might think I think to pay $11 million for a shutdown reliever, I don't think that's obscene. It's just, the question is the front end of this contract, how he plans on using him. That's more of the question as to whether or not this was a good deal.
So, Scott, damn you for coming up with a good counter. No, I agree. Earthquake did fantastic. And there's always that potential. And I could be completely, for me, the cost, to your point, the front end, how's it going to impact you? I would have much rather used those funds for almost anything else at that point that I would have perceived to be more, I don't know, just useful in the time. But yeah, he can still very well have a track record that is going to be amazing. And you brought up a perfect example to why I'm a massive idiot and to be completely wrong.
No.
well, with that,
So
let's transition into the $52 million contract this year for 2040. The Burrow watch. It's one of those where, it was shocking when it happened, but the guy's a center fielder. Like, if a center fielder with power is hard to find, and it was a little bit more of a, understanding of why you would do that type of deal. I mean, there's other people who will say, well, no, I'm never going to spend that kind of money. But if you do have that kind of money and you're going to add a center fielder that has some pop, has high contact, high outfield range, like steal some bases. He does everything that you would. He's not Gordon Knopp, but he's he's right there. I mean, he's going to be a guy that's going to produce for you. So I think it's worthwhile continuing the follow on him, because not only has it's fun talking about him, but he started off hot. His power is there now, and I think, let's see, I'll pull it up here. He's hit 8 home runs already.
He's calmed down a little bit, but yeah, he did start off like hot out the gate. And I got excited about it. I'm like, holy cow. Despite the fact I don't think
This is
50
gonna be
million is
it.
still worth it. Yeah, he's still
52 home run, projected 52 home runs. He's had kind of cooled off his batting average, but he's still 333 on base, projected for 9.4 WAR. I mean, that's NOP range for WAR. I know Mike, Commissioner Mike, doesn't want to hear about WAR, but that's what it's good for.
Well, and another note, so his batting average for balls in play is 233.
So
this year,
luck.
233. So that's not a lot of lucky hits. Last year, his batting average for balls in play was 303. I don't have the league average in front of me, but I regularly look it up when I'm comparing my players. Like, okay, they're not doing well. How is their BIP compared to league average? Are they being lucky, or are they getting hard hits, right?
Yep.
And he's not very lucky, it seems, this year, and still hitting well.
Yep. Yeah, Crystal Lake was a team, I know we didn't touch on it in the contender pretender, but if Burrow continues at this pace, I think it pushes them into that gray area of contender, because they can go as high as he takes them, really.
Yeah, 50 some homers can carry a team.
Yep.
Here, my only question to him is, I looked at him, he's got 2 injuries this year, both lasting a week, both day to day. One was the end of spring training, and one was about a week ago. Is that a sign for a 25-year-old?
a little Pat Wilson in him.
Yeah.
Mr. Glass.
No, I like him. And, again, it's one of those crazy contracts. And by crazy, I mean, it's just weird, right? It's just something that I wouldn't have thought of. It's thinking outside of the box. I think that the Berrios contract probably owes a little something to the Burrow contract, right?
For sure. I think the Berrios contract is a little bit more in line, probably what Burrows should have gotten. I don't know why everyone lost their minds last year for actually the contract for Burrows, but I think Berrios is a little bit more realistic. But
the structuring. So we used to have limits. We used to have restrictions in the league as to doing this, right?
We still do, as far as extensions when they're on your team. I think that what people don't realize, you can do that from a free agent. Like, from a free agent, you can offer them whatever you want.
So what's the logic there as a board member? What's the lot? So they say with extensions, you can't do it because we think it's bad for extension.
You can, you just need to meet certain criteria.
Okay, so it's got restrictions on extensions because we think it's bad for certain players, but it's a free-for-all on free agents. Why is it okay for free agents but needs to be restricted on extensions?
Because in free agency, you will have more or less competition, leading to something ridiculous like this, or something like Berrios that's going to make it still, I don't want to call it realistic, but at least impactful. Versus if you are the only one who is dealing with the player by yourself, you kind of have a lot of those restrictions removed, and then what you're going to offer him, like a $3 million contract, and kind of hoard him away from the rest of the league. You have more control over it when it's an extension because you're the only one talking to that player. Obviously, with free agency, it's open to everyone. And like I said, last year, this one got really ridiculous. And I don't know. I think it has the potential to still work out in Crystal Lake's favor and RJ's favor. But it is definitely an insane deal. And I always question them once again, kind of like, why aren't you spending that money in international free agency? Why aren't you doing something different? But I mean, Burrow's premium position, center field.
But if it look at 28 million for a 28-year-old center fielder who's hitting 60, 50, 40.
Well, 28 million, what is that, his final year? Because
No, his final year is 29 at 25 million. Look, again, it's the de-escalation that I don't like about these deals, because it's almost like you're tricking the player into saying yes through some algorithm cheat, right? So yeah. Do I think 52 million for him this year? Do I think that's ridiculous? I absolutely do. But this dude is going to make 35 million at the age of 27, 28 million at the age of 28, and 25 million at the age of 29. Those are the 3 prime years. Yeah. And from what he's done so far, I would say that's a smart play. I'm not saying it's a smart play last year or even a smart play this year, although 140 OPS plus looks pretty damn good. I just think it's not. I wouldn't take the deal. I wouldn't take a 111 OPS plus for what did he make, 50 million last year? I wouldn't take 60. I wouldn't take the 140 in 105 plate appearances for what he's doing now, because I think it's going to be some reversion to the mean. Having said that, looking at what he's done so far, looking at what my scout says he can do and where he might go, unless these 2 little injuries, again, he's got 2 1-week injuries, unless that turns into a trend, this was not a bad move. Not terrible, right? You could argue it's not a genius move. I'll give you that, Mike. But it's a gamble that doesn't look horrible to me. If you're telling me that you're going to get this guy in the prime of his career at 27, 28, and 29 years old for those salaries, I'm taking that deal.
Well, I think that's what the question is because you start to look smarter as it gets further in, and you look, I don't want to say dumb, but you look, it's ridiculous in the beginning. And then every year, like we were talking about Berrios, you're like, oh, lockdown reliever for 9 million. And everybody forgot you spent 27 to get him there, but I don't know. I can't. Well, even if I did spend that money, he would be terrible. So I don't even know I have an opinion.
No one spends 50 million to sign a prospect, to sign a draftee. No one spends 50 million to sign an international free agent. Has anybody spent 50 million to sign an international free agent?
There's been some 20, 30. You have to go back and check.
That's my point. I think there's a higher probability for someone like him continue. Like there's more risk in the international free agent. Now, granted, it's a lower dollar amount, but like you're like, okay, I'm spending more money, but I got lower risk, right? So,
well, international, you're signing guys that are 16, 17 years old, and you have to make sure you have the system in place. You're spending the money to make sure they develop. You have the correct coaches, everything. Yeah, so here's the question. Versus the guy who's ready now.
Yeah, so 20 million, 18 million to sign an international free agent, or 18 million or even 15 million to sign a 20-year-old draftee, versus 50 million for someone that you don't need those structures in place. I'm not saying it's a good deal. I'm just saying it makes it less crazy.
Oh yeah, I get it.
I did 27 for Rimfire, and that we all know how that worked out. And now Mike has him, and he's amazing. So there you go.
Well, let's switch to our last topic, which is more of just a reminder to the rest of the league on international amateur free agents have been announced. And we just had the first private, I guess, showing or like showcase, probably would be the way to route.
Your highlight of your 10 selected guys.
So just make sure that you have your list, your 10 guys selected on your scout list, so that that you can. I know mine, the 10 that I had, I didn't get anything this first round, but I've had in the past where you start getting your scout gets different ratings or different.
He gets real jacked up and excited about certain guys.
Yes.
And then you
And
spend 50 million on him. Sorry.
yeah, then you got 50 million laying around. You can just throw them at one guy. But the other point of it too is like, look, in the past, there's been this idea, and I've fallen into it too, where it's like you think, oh, I can't spend any money on anyone this period. But nothing has actually changed with the way the game works. Like you can spend, you have 2.8 million to spend, but if you go over that, there are different thresholds on restrictions on what you can offer. But now with the way the game works, there are players that are asking for less than what they have in the past. So you might be restricted at like 250,000, or I don't remember the exact numbers, but you're restricted based on what you spent the year before, but you can still make an offer on guys like that. And you can make, if it's 2.8 million, you can make 10 or 12 or, whatever offers at 250,000. So you're not restricted on signing these guys when the period starts later. So something we wanted to throw out there and make sure everyone was aware of, that, you're not restricted on spending the dollars. You might be restricted on the dollar amount that you can offer, but make sure that you're, aware of that. And, there might be some guys that you can get. And I know Michael,
Michael make you aware of it.
Yeah.
Aware of a major success.
Well, I know Mike, like
Michael, Don Washington, I like to trump up my guys. It's okay.
Yeah. You got a guy a couple seasons ago for like $400,000. It's a 5-star potential prospect now. I know I got a guy a couple seasons ago for like $600,000. So it's not one of those, like, people think, oh, well, I got to spend, you'll see I've spent money. I know I spent money on a prospect, a third baseman. I have to pull his name up here while we're talking, but I know I spent money on prospects before and, gone above and beyond kind of that dollar amount threshold. But there's been also guys where, you're spending 400,000, or Ramon Villa was the one I spent a lot of money on, but there's a third baseman prospect, Gonzalez, that my scout views as a 5-star guy that I think I spent 650,000 on. So just kind of my advice, I guess, and we can kind of chime in on this, but there are guys that your scout values that other scouts might be overlooking, and that you can get at a decent price. There's going to be the top guys that maybe some people are not able to offer the 20 or 20 plus million dollars to sign when you factor in the tax with it. But there's also guys in there that, by inviting them to these showcases for each of your teams, you get a little bit of an edge. You might have that positive relationship that someone else might not have. And if you're close on the contract that you offer them, you end up getting it. So,
well, if you cast a big net, there's how many guys do you have in your team that have like a star and a half, when you could, get somebody in here for a couple $100,000 that's, 3.
Right.
That was exactly my point last year.
Yeah.
Lenny, was just, take the chances. The guys that yes, there's plenty of teams that, you'll get their one-off. Hey, I got this 4-5-star prospect. Great. Guess what? I've never gotten them, and I pump the 18 whatever million into it every year. I just don't get those big names. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you just cast a bigger net, get more guys in there, almost every single guy on that list is better than the half-star guys my scout is finding, despite the fact that I'm pumping 18 million into them. Mm-hmm. You're giving yourself more opportunities that, hey, something's going to correct. I try to pay attention to my coaches, so I pump the money into the development. So my system's there. If I need it, if I have a player that can grow, I will have him grow. So I will take those chances. More chances, the better, every single year. So I mean, if I had a recommendation, that's it. It's take the chances. You don't need to spend that 20 million on a guy. You don't look the next tier down. It's like typically 7 to 8, maybe sometimes 9 million. Look the next tier down after that of level of guys. It's like 4 or 5 million. Start attacking some of those lower levels earlier, and that's where you pick up guys that might turn into a 5-star prospect unexpectedly earlier.
Well, and we were talking the last time I was on, like the scouring of the free agents at the beginning just to fill up the team. And you're looking for the 2-star potentials, just to sign them to fill up spots when you could get maybe 3 or 4 here.
Yeah, I mean,
and rather than waiting to see what trash, is left out by somebody else that you get lucky with.
Exactly. Take the chances because anything can happen.
Yep. No, that's the way to go. I mean, for you guys, anything could happen. Like for me, it's snake eyes every time.
The biggest pessimist I have ever met when it
Have
comes
you
to this
seen my
league.
team? Let's if we weren't running long already, we could do the dissection of Bakersfield.
I would
Damn
let
Cubs fan.
How had you
Damn
how you
Cubs
have
fan.
made
Yeah.
you have laid out my strategy. You're just infinitely more articulate about it, and I'm just louder than you are. And so, but the thing is like all those moves I would have made. And for you, where were you last year in the championship game? Where was I? Like I don't even think my guys stuck around for the last game. They're like, oh, whatever. Mendoza's already in Costa Rica with his
pull the Sammy Sosa and home.
yeah, I mean, I can't do anything right. Gosh, and Machado, remember Machado I was talking about? I'm like, oh, I picked him. He's already developed. I mean, he's hitting 0.75. Like,
patience, grasshopper.
Yes.
Look,
do I seem like I burn at a tempo of patience?
no, that's the point. I think you need to incorporate a little bit in, is all I'm saying.
But that's why they added us, because we're opposite. Like I talk fast and loud, and you're like, listen to these really smart stats.
No. Before we close here, I do want to say I like that we have balance to this now. We have 2 on the SL and we have 2 on the IL, and we can focus. We can talk about both sides, and it's not just like what we're focused on. So I love it that we've got a little bit of balance here. We'll structure and we'll still keep bringing people on, learn about different teams, and still hit the high points of different topics around the league, and make sure we talk about the draft, talk about the IFA guys a little bit more, and then just
and I'll complain.
Yeah, let me complain.
So if I could close with something. So
yeah,
I started this based on a conversation with a fellow league member. You guys in this league recognized that I was going through some difficult times, that I let be known in our forums and Slack channels. I can't remember if the Slack channel was around back then, but it was touching what you guys did for me. And I remember talking to him at the bar and saying, in person, which was like, I couldn't believe that I was doing it. Like sitting down with another human being face to face, talking about, fake baseball was like so fun to me. It was like surreal. And I got such a euphoric feeling about talking about my team, his team, that I mentioned to him that I'd like to see the winter leagues, be something that was done via Zoom. Look, I think it was towards the tail end of COVID, or not. It wasn't height of COVID, but it was definitely where these types of platforms were much more I had a much better understanding of them at that time than I did before COVID. And I'm like, this would be great. Why don't we do that? I would get so much out of it, and this type of stuff is so therapeutic for me when it comes to things like post-traumatic stress from work and the issues that I deal with my job, that I just want to thank everybody for agreeing to do this kind of stuff, because it's very helpful to me to do this kind of thing, and I really, really enjoy it. So thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for being involved. And I've got some ideas on how we can take what we're doing here, but also involve other people. And one of the ideas I've got is like, deciding a day of the week, like from 7 to 8 o'clock, or a half an hour, and just set up a Zoom call, send it to the whole entire league, and just shoot the shit. Like,
Little PEBA happy hour.
yeah, talk about PEBA stuff. Just
I would love it. This kind of
that's
stuff.
huge. Like, to me, that's huge. Like, everyone sees everybody. We can have fun, talk about our teams.
And look, disagree.
Yeah.
I
And you
love
can defend your
love
choices.
disagreeing with people in a polite way. It's great.
So we'll look into doing that on top of the podcast too. But I mean, with Zoom, like, there's ways we can manipulate it, or do 30 minutes at a time, keep it free for everybody. I know Lenny's got some options that we can do. And
Yeah. I got some bougie options.
yeah. So we'll present those moving forward. But thank you all guys from, getting together, keeping this going, keeping something positive going, and we'll be with you next time when we get this going. So
And if
be
you
more
want
regular,
to
but
send some messages, we'll get you on.
yeah,
I would love to hear from people and steal every idea they have.
heck yeah.
And then watch it fail.
I know Dan and Rob have reached out to us. They've got tight schedules, but if you want to get on here and talk about your team.
I said this off camera, and I like to say it publicly. I will work around Dan's schedule to do a one-on-one with him.
Yeah, we'll figure out something.
I got lots of things to talk to Dan about.
Yeah, we'll figure out something to get Dan on. I know he's got a tight schedule. We'll get him on. And
I would gladly watch that.
yeah.
I would too. So,
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see you.
Time, right?
All right.
All
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya.